The first scream cut through the bright morning like a blade through silk, sharp enough to stop the birds mid-song and make every hand in the field freeze. People would later repeat the words they thought they heard carried on the wind, words that sounded desperate and strange, words that turned into rumors by lunchtime and into accusations by sundown. Please, it's rubbing against it. By noon, the whole town believed they knew what had happened on Calder Ridge Ranch, and by nightfall, they believed they knew who the monster was. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a moment right now. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of doing the right thing even when the world misunderstands you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel Soul of Light. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Calder Ridge Ranch sat under a wide, honest sky, the kind that only exists in open country where the sun rules the day and shadows never lie for long. It was late spring, daytime stretching generously, grass green and thick from recent rains. Rowan Hale had worked this land since he was barely tall enough to see over a saddle, inheriting it not with money, but with responsibility after his father's quiet passing. Rowan was known as a man of few words, a man whose kindness showed up in actions rather than smiles, and a man who carried old grief the way some people carry scars, visible only when the light hit just right. He lived alone in the weathered ranch house, woke before dawn, and believed deeply that if you cared for animals and land with patience, they would teach you how to care for people too. That morning had begun like any other, sunlight pouring over the hills, dust floating lazily as Rowan repaired the east pasture fence. The ranch had been struggling. Feed costs were high, storms had damaged equipment, and a long drought the previous year had left debts that pressed on Rowan's chest like a weight. Still, he kept going, because quitting had never been an option he allowed himself to consider. He noticed the old windmill groaning as it turned, noticed the cattle grazing peacefully, and noticed the silence that came before everything went wrong. Near the creek line, Rowan heard frantic movement, the sound of hooves slipping on mud and a strained, uneven breath. He followed the noise and found Juniper, a young mare recently rescued from neglect, trapped against a fallen fence post. The sharp wood had torn her flank, and a broken strap from an old halter was caught in the wound, rubbing relentlessly with every terrified movement. Juniper's eyes were wide, her body shaking, pain and panic feeding each other in a cruel loop. Rowan knew if she kept thrashing, she could make the injury fatal. He moved carefully, slowly, speaking in a low, steady tone meant more for her heartbeat than her ears. As he tried to free the strap and ease her away from the post, Juniper reared suddenly, her legs slipping, her weight bearing down in the worst possible way. The strap dragged against raw flesh again, and that was when the scream escaped Rowan, torn from him without permission, a sound of fear and urgency that the wind carried far beyond the creek. "Please, it's rubbing against it," he pleaded, not to anyone listening but to the world itself, begging it to stop hurting something innocent. What Rowan did next would later be twisted into something ugly, but in that moment, it was only compassion in motion. He pressed his jacket against the wound to reduce friction, used his own body as a barrier between Juniper and the jagged wood, and worked with shaking hands to cut the strap free. Blood soaked into the dirt, sunlight glinting off it in a way that made his stomach turn, but he did not stop. When Juniper finally collapsed, exhausted rather than injured further, Rowan stayed there in the dirt, holding pressure, whispering calm until her breathing slowed. By the time the veterinarian arrived, called by a passer-by who had heard the scream, the scene looked chaotic to an untrained eye. A man on the ground, blood on his clothes, a trembling animal pinned close to him, his hands stained red. Phones came out, photos were taken. Whispers started immediately, feeding on misunderstanding and the human hunger for scandal. In a town where everyone knew everyone, the story mutated fast. People said Rowan had been rough, careless, worse. They said they had always thought there was something off about the quiet rancher on the ridge. News traveled faster than truth. By afternoon, the feed store felt colder when Rowan walked in, eyes following him with suspicion. A long-time neighbor crossed the street rather than greet him. Online posts appeared, vague but poisonous, hinting at cruelty, calling for investigations, boycotts, punishment. Rowan felt the old grief rise again, that familiar ache of being alone with something heavy. He went back to the ranch, tended to Juniper under the vet's instructions, and waited, because waiting was all he knew how to do when the world made up its mind. Days passed under bright skies that felt mocking in their cheerfulness. Juniper improved slowly, her wound healing, her trust returning in small, fragile steps. Rowan slept little, haunted by the sound of that scream echoing in his mind, haunted by the way people looked at him now. He wondered if he should sell the ranch, walk away, let the land forget his footsteps. But each morning the sun rose anyway, and with it, the quiet reminder that truth, like healing, takes time. The shock that silenced the town did not come from shouting or confrontation. It came quietly, in daylight, through evidence and humility. The veterinarian released a detailed report explaining the injury, the danger of the strap rubbing against the wound, and how Rowan's actions had prevented far worse damage. Security footage from a nearby road surfaced, showing Rowan running toward the creek, not away, dropping tools to help. A local animal rescue shared Juniper's progress, photos of her calm eyes and mending body, crediting Rowan's quick thinking. Piece by piece, the ugly story unraveled. People felt something heavier than surprise. They felt shame. They remembered small kindnesses they had overlooked, repairs Rowan had done for free, animals he had taken in without complaint. Apologies came awkwardly at first, then more sincerely. The feed store felt warmer again. Neighbors waved. One morning, Rowan found a new fence post left neatly by the creek. No note, just an unspoken acknowledgement. Rowan did not celebrate. He did not lecture. He kept working, kept caring for Juniper, kept waking with the sun, but something inside him shifted. He allowed himself to believe that doing the right thing mattered even when no one was watching, even when everyone misunderstood. The ranch breathed easier. So did he. As the story draws close, if this journey of misunderstanding, patience, and quiet redemption touched your heart even a little, please take a second to like the video, share it with someone who believes in fairness, and subscribe to Soul of Light. Your engagement tells us these stories matter, and just before we end, I have a special request. Please comment the word compassion below if you believe that truth always finds its way into the light. On a clear afternoon with the sun high and honest, Rowan watched Juniper walk freely across the pasture. No strap, no wound, just strength returning step by step. The town moved on as towns always do, but the lesson lingered like warmth after daylight fades. Sometimes the most shocking thing is not cruelty, but how quickly kindness can be misread, and how powerfully it can heal when given the chance.